Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Happy Thursday morning to you. This is Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We're looking at the language of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 31 specifically, where it says, "And the Son of Man shall send forth his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together the elect from one end of heaven unto another." Now, we are focusing on the sounding of the great trumpet. I have suggested to you that you read Isaiah 24 through 27 to set the context. Why? Because Matthew chapter 24 and verse 31 draws from and cites Isaiah 27:13. That's why. You know, Jesus came to say that the time for the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophets had arrived. In His day, in His time. Folks, look, we're not waiting for the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. Okay? We're not. Or else Torah would still be valid. Anyway, I've taken you through a little bit of Isaiah chapter 27, and I urged you to read Isaiah 24 through 27 to set the context. So, we've come down to Isaiah 27 and verse 7. Now, the Lord made the promise in verse 2 and following of the time of the salvation. And yet now, paradoxically, he says, and this language can be a little bit difficult, but I'll try to explain it to the very best of my limited ability. Has he, that is Yahweh, struck Israel as he, Yahweh, struck those who struck him? Well, who had struck Israel? Israel's enemies, Babylon, Assyria. You know, Israel's enemies. So, has Yahweh struck Israel as he struck those who struck him? Or has he, Israel, now watch the language, please. Has he been slain according to the slaughter of those who were slain by him? Has Israel been slain like Yahweh killed Israel's enemies? Do you catch what the Lord just said? Has God slain Israel like he killed the other nations? Has he killed Israel? Here's the answer. Verse 8. In measure. What? Yeah, the Lord killed Israel. Well, how? By putting physical bodies in the grave? No. Here's the answer. Here's Yahweh's answer. Yes, the Lord has slain Israel in measure. How? By sending her away. Now, there are two things I want to gather from this very quickly. Number one, the death in view here is obviously not physical death, since he's talking about killing Israel by sending her away into captivity. You see, this is parallel to Ezekiel chapter 37 and the valley of the dry bones. Ezekiel saw, now he didn't see just Judah. He saw the whole house of Israel dead and in the graves, in captivity in the foreign lands, separated from the land, separated from God because of sin. But once again, it's not biological death, because those biologically dead people were supposedly talking. And oh, by the way, Hosea chapter 13, a contemporary of Isaiah, says when Israel humbled herself, he was exalted. Or when Ephraim humbled himself in Israel, he was exalted. But when he sinned, he died. Watch this. Yet he sinned more and more. How do dead people keep on sinning? That is to say, how do physically dead people keep on sinning? Well, they obviously don't. So the nature of the death that is identified here is not biological death. Now hang on to that, because folks, Isaiah 24 through 27 serve as a key foundational text and source for Paul's doctrine of the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15. So if Paul was looking for resurrection from the death of Isaiah 24 to 27, the death of Hosea 13, the death of Ezekiel 37, but if the death of Isaiah 25 through 27, if the death of Ezekiel 37, if the death of Hosea 13 is not biological death and people in the literal ground, then guess what? That's not what Paul was looking forward to, unless Paul tells us he's changing, number one, the meaning of death, and number two, changing the meaning of the graves. Because we have the definition of death and the graves in these texts. Point number two, the death, again, the death is spiritual death. It's not biological death. And number two, it is corporate death. Look at the language. Has he struck Israel? That's a corporate identity. Has he, Israel, been slain according to the slaughter of those who were slain by the Lord? In measure, by sending it what? The nation, away. You, that's Yahweh, contended with it, the nation. He removes it, the nation, by his rough wind. So, we are dealing here, number one, with resurrection text, being quoted by Jesus in Matthew 24, 29 to 31. It's resurrection text, but point number two, it's not dealing with biological death. And point number three, it is dealing with corporate death, not individual death, not individual bodies in the graves. Now then, that sort of kind of sets the stage. Boy, you know, I absolutely love Isaiah 24 to 27, and I could keep going on this a long, long time. So here we are on Thursday. On Monday, I'm going to pick up with verse 10. Well, we'll start back at verse 9 and following. And we'll probably start at verse 7 again. But anyway, the point being, we're going to re-examine the context of the prediction that we're headed toward, the prediction of the sounding of the great trumpet for the gathering of the elect. Who are the elect? They are the dead. Are they physically dead? No, they're not. They're the body, the corporate body of the elect, alienated from God, scattered, separated from the land of Israel. But they would be gathered at the sounding of the great trumpet. Not physically gathered. That's not the point. And I'll demonstrate that as we continue in Matthew 24, 31, when we look at the word gathering. In the meantime, hey, I am out of time. Don't forget, I'll continue. Well, misplaced it again. We'll continue our examination and refutation of Lance Conley's book, Hope Resurrected, tomorrow. And we're going to be continuing to look at the fact, Mr. Conley says, hey, the Bible teaches that election would end at the day of the Lord. Well, in the first place, it doesn't say that. The Bible does not say that. It says a specific kind of election would come to an end. But Mr. Conley's claims about the election ending at the day of the Lord and no evangelism, no sin, no calling of sinners after the day of the Lord, that is absolutely false. Therefore, Mr. Conley's book is false. I'll see you on the flip side.